The massive crystal chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with nervous energy as Ambassador Sarah Chun walked through the towering doors. Her simple black suit looked plain against the elaborate robes and breathing apparatus of the alien delegates, but her steady pace never wavered. Behind her, the small human delegation followed in perfect formation. The Zephyrian Council speaker, a tall being with multiple arms and shimmering blue skin, gestured toward the central platform. Ambassador Chin, we appreciate your return to these discussions. Perhaps now we can reach a reasonable agreement. Sarah stopped at the designated human section, a small area tucked between the massive Krotak Empire and the Ethereal Collective. The positioning wasn't accidental. Every detail in the council chamber served to remind smaller species of their place in the galactic hierarchy. Speaker Veltar, Sarah replied with a slight nod. I've reviewed your latest proposal with my government. I'm afraid we cannot accept these terms. A wave of whispers rippled through the chamber. The Krotak delegate, a mountain of muscle and chitinous armor, leaned forward. Humans continue to be unreasonable. You are new to space. You must learn your place. The speaker raised one of his four hands for silence. Ambassador Chun, surely you understand the benefits of joining our trade consortium. Access to galactic markets, protection under council law, technological advancement opportunities. Sarah pulled out a data pad and read from it calmly. Let me summarize what you're offering. Humans would receive junior member status in your consortium. We could sell raw materials at fixed prices, 20% below market value. We could purchase finished goods at markup rates of 300%. Any human colonies established must follow council-approved development plans, with council overseers managing all major decisions. These are standard terms for developing species, the Ethereal Collective's representative said, its voice echoing strangely through its translation device. Many worlds have prospered under such arrangements. And, in exchange, Sarah continued, humanity would provide exclusive mining rights to our asteroid fields, grant basing rights for council fleets in our space, and contribute 15% of our industrial output to council projects. All human military development would require council approval, and any disputes with other species would be resolved exclusively through council mediation. The chamber fell silent. Even the background hum of life support systems seemed muted as every delegate focused on the human ambassador. You're asking us to become a client state, Sarah said simply. To give up our sovereignty in exchange for the privilege of being junior partners in your economy. Speaker Veltar's blue skin shifted to a deeper hue. Ambassador, these terms reflect the reality of galactic civilization. Humanity is young, inexperienced. You lack the technological base, the economic networks, the military strength to operate independently. We offer guidance and protection. Protection from whom? Sarah asked. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The galaxy is vast and dangerous, the Krotak delegate rumbled. Pirates, rogue AI networks, spatial anomalies, hostile species beyond the outer rim. Young species that venture alone often disappear entirely. Sarah nodded slowly. I see. And these threats just happen to become manageable once a species accepts council oversight. The council brings order to chaos, Speaker Veltar replied. This has been our way for over 10,000 years. Hundreds of species have joined and prospered. Prospered according to whose definition? The question came from Dr. Marcus Webb, the human delegation's economic advisor. He stepped forward despite several alien delegates hissing in displeasure at his interruption. Dr. Webb, Sarah said calmly, please share your analysis. Marcus activated his holographic projector, filling the space above their delegation with charts and data streams. We've analyzed economic data from 47 member species over the past 2 centuries. The pattern is consistent. Upon joining the consortium, raw material production increases an average of 400%, while finished goods manufacturing drops to near zero. Educational focus shifts from technical innovation to resource extraction. Population growth slows dramatically due to resource allocation requirements. Angry voices erupted throughout the chamber. The speaker's skin flashed bright blue as he called for order. Furthermore, Marcus continued over the noise. Military capabilities of member species declined to ceremonial levels within 50 years of joining. Interestingly, this coincides with increased Council fleet presence in their space. These statistics are taken out of context, the ethereal representative protested. Member species focus on their natural advantages while the Council provides necessary services. Natural advantages? Dr. Elena Vasquez, the human xenobiologist, joined the conversation. We've identified clear patterns of technological suppression. Member species that once had advanced manufacturing capabilities are now limited to extracting raw materials. Their education systems have been restructured to discourage innovation. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted accusations, threat displays activated across multiple species, and the speaker's calls for order when ignored. Sarah waited until the noise reached its peak. Then, spoke in a voice that somehow carried through the din. "Thank you for confirming our analysis." The chamber fell silent again. Every eye, optical sensor, and electromagnetic detector focused on the human ambassador. "You see," Sarah continued conversationally, "we've been monitoring galactic communications for the past 50 years. Long before we announced our presence, we were learning, watching, analyzing." Speaker Veltar's skin had shifted to a pale, almost white hue. "That's impossible. Your species only achieved faster-than-light travel 15 years ago." Sarah smiled, an expression that several delegates found unsettling despite their xenobiological briefings. "That's when we announced our achievement. Humans have been exploring the galaxy for quite some time." She gestured to Marcus, who changed his holographic display. New images appeared, detailed scans of Council installations, fleet movements, trade routes, and communication networks. "We know about the Kepler incident," Sarah said quietly. "The Altarian civilization that refused Council membership. They were prosperous, innovative, independent. Until pirates began attacking their shipping. Pirates using Council-manufactured weapons and ships." The Krotak delegate stood, towering over the humans. "You accuse the Council of—" "I'm stating facts," Sarah interrupted. "The Altarians held out for 30 years before finally accepting Council protection. Within a century, their civilization had been reduced to mining colonies. Funny how the pirate attacks stopped the moment they signed the membership agreement." "The galaxy is complex," Speaker Veltar said carefully. "Coincidences happen. Circumstances change. Like what happened to the Nexus Commonwealth?" Dr. Webb asked. "Or the free traders of Epsilon Sector. All coincidences, I suppose." Elena stepped forward with a new data display. "We've identified the pattern across 17 different cases over the past 5 centuries. Independent civilizations face increasing pressure from pirates, economic sanctions, and mysterious technical failures. Those pressures disappear once they accept Council membership, and the restrictions that come with it." "You're describing a protection racket," Sarah said bluntly. "Join or face consequences that miraculously disappear once you comply." The silence in the chamber was deafening. Even the life support systems seemed to hold their breath. Speaker Veltar's multiple arms spread in what might have been a conciliatory gesture. "Ambassador Chun, you misunderstand our intentions. The Council seeks cooperation, mutual benefit. Perhaps we can modify the terms." "No." The single word cut through his speech like a blade. "I've consulted with my government," Sarah continued. "Humanity declines membership in your consortium. We decline your trade agreements. We decline your protection. We will be withdrawing from Council space effective immediately." The chamber exploded into chaos again, but this time the noise carried a different tone. Panic, confusion, desperate calculations. "You cannot simply withdraw," the Krotak delegate roared. "No species leaves Council space. It's unprecedented." "There's a first time for everything," Sarah replied calmly. Speaker Veltar was frantically conferring with his advisors, his skin cycling through colors rapidly. "Ambassador, please reconsider. You don't understand the dangers of independent operation. The risks, we'll take our chances." "This is madness." The ethereal representative's voice crackled with static. "Your species will be destroyed within a decade. The Outer Rim territories are filled with threats beyond your comprehension." Sarah gathered her data pad and nodded to her delegation. "Perhaps. But if we're destroyed, it will be as a free species, not as pets in your galactic zoo." "Wait," Speaker Veltar called out as the humans turned to leave. Surely we can negotiate. The terms can be adjusted. We can offer better conditions. Sarah paused at the chamber entrance and looked back. Speaker Veltar, let me ask you something. In the 10,000 years of council history, how many member species have ever been promoted to full equality? How many have been allowed to develop their own military forces? How many have been permitted to establish independent trade relationships? The silence that greeted her questions provided the answer. The council has created a stable, peaceful galaxy, Speaker Veltar said finally. Order requires structure. Structure requires hierarchy. And humanity requires freedom, Sarah replied. Even if freedom means facing the unknown alone. As the human delegation walked out of the chamber, the assembled delegates sat in stunned silence. For 10,000 years, the pattern had been consistent. Every species eventually accepted council protection. Every species eventually fell in line. But humans were walking away. In the executive council chambers high above the main assembly, emergency sessions were already beginning. Economic advisors pulled up trade projections. Military analysts reviewed threat assessments. Psychological evaluation teams tried to understand how they had miscalculated so badly. The Zephyrian High Council was in emergency session within the hour. Fleet commanders received priority communications. Trade consortium leaders found their schedules cleared for urgent meetings. Humanity had said no. For the first time in millennia, a species had looked at the council's offer and walked away. The implications were staggering. If humans could survive independently, other species might begin to question their own arrangements. The careful balance of the galaxy could shift. But surely humans couldn't survive alone. They were young, inexperienced, isolated. The galaxy was vast and dangerous. Pirates, rogue AI networks, hostile aliens beyond the rim. The threats were real. The Council had spent centuries ensuring they remained real. As news of humanity's rejection spread through the communication networks, emergency meetings convened on 100 worlds. The stability that had defined galactic civilization for 10,000 years suddenly seemed fragile. And somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, human ships were already moving. Not fleeing, but repositioning. Taking up positions that spoke of planning, preparation, and a confidence that terrified the Council more than any military threat. For the first time in their long history, the Galactic Council faced the possibility that their system might not be inevitable, that another way might be possible. The humans had walked away from everything the Council offered. Now the question that haunted every delegate, every administrator, every fleet commander was simple. What did humanity know that they didn't? 3 months after humanity's shocking departure from Council space, Admiral Thexvar stood in the command center of the Council's most advanced battleship. Through the massive viewing ports, he watched his fleet of 200 vessels maintain formation around the human frontier. Still no response to our communication attempts, his aide reported. Human space appears to be completely sealed off. Thexvar's tentacles writhed with frustration. In his 400 years of service, he had never encountered a species so completely unpredictable. What about our monitoring stations? All dark, sir. The humans discovered and disabled every listening post we had in their territory. They did it so quietly that we didn't realize what was happening until after their delegation left the council chambers. The admiral studied the tactical display showing the border between council space and humanity's territory. 43 star systems, most containing rich asteroid fields, and at least one habitable world. It should have been impossible for such a small territory to maintain independence, yet here they were. Sir, the communications officer called out. We're receiving a priority transmission from the council chambers. Speaker Veltar's image appeared on the main screen, his blue skin darker than usual. Admiral, what's the status of operation guidance? No progress, Speaker. The humans refuse all contact. Our economic pressure tactics have had no effect because they're not trading with anyone. The pirate raids we've encouraged have met with unexpected resistance. Explain. Thexvar gestured to his tactical officer, who brought up recordings of recent engagements. The pirates we've been supporting for decades have suffered significant losses attempting to raid human shipping. The humans appear to have military capabilities far beyond what they demonstrated during first contact. The recordings showed brief, intense battles. Pirate fleets that had terrorized smaller species for centuries were being systematically destroyed by human forces that appeared and disappeared like ghosts. "This is impossible," Speaker Veltar said. "Our intelligence estimates showed humanity with a modest defense fleet. Nothing that could challenge organized pirate fleets." "Our intelligence was wrong, Speaker. The humans have been hiding their true capabilities from the beginning." In the council chambers, emergency sessions had been running continuously since humanity's departure. Trade consortium leaders reported disruptions they hadn't anticipated. Without human raw materials, several manufacturing worlds were facing shortages. The asteroid mining operations that humans had been conducting in their space were apparently far more extensive than anyone realized. "How could we have miscalculated so badly?" Speaker Veltar asked his advisors. Counselor Zethrim, an ancient being from one of the Council's founding species, activated his translation device. "We assumed they were like all the others. We saw what we expected to see. But the economic projections were clear," protested the Trade Consortium representative. "No species could maintain the industrial base they were showing without access to galactic markets." "Unless they never needed galactic markets to begin with," Zethrim replied quietly. Meanwhile, in the human frontier, Captain Lisa Rodriguez sat in the command chair of the exploration vessel Discovery. Around her, the bridge crew monitored deep space sensors that were far more advanced than anything the Council suspected humanity possessed. "Captain," her sensor operator reported, "Council forces are maintaining position at the border. No signs of advance, but they're clearly running extensive scans." "Let them scan," Lisa replied. "They won't detect anything we don't want them to find." The truth was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades. While the Council believed humans had only achieved faster-than-light travel 15 years ago, the reality was far different. Human exploration ships had been mapping the galaxy for over a century, staying hidden and gathering intelligence. The decision to reveal themselves had been carefully calculated. Humanity needed to understand how the galactic community operated before making contact. What they discovered had been disturbing, but not surprising. "Captain," the communications officer said, "we're receiving a signal from Deep Station 7. Lisa nodded. Deep Station 7 was one of humanity's hidden installations, built in the empty space between star systems where no one thought to look. It was one of dozens of such facilities, forming a network that spanned far beyond humanity's official territory. Patch it through to my ready room." In the privacy of her quarters, Lisa activated the secure communication link. Admiral Sarah Chun appeared on the screen, no longer wearing her ambassador's uniform, but the simple gray of the human colonial defense force. "Captain, what's the situation on your end?" "All quiet, Admiral. The Council forces are maintaining their positions, but not advancing. Their scouts are testing our border defenses, but they're not finding what they're looking for." Sarah nodded. "Good. Phase 2 is beginning ahead of schedule. The Council is more rattled than we expected. What's the latest from Earth?" "Industrial output is at 98% of projections despite the supposed loss of galactic trade. Turns out we weren't as dependent on Council markets as they believed. Our hidden mining operations in the asteroid fields beyond Proxima have been more than sufficient." Lisa smiled. "And our friends in the Outer Rim? That's the interesting part. We're getting communication requests from over a dozen independent species that have been hiding from the Council for centuries. Word is spreading that someone finally said no and survived." This was perhaps the most shocking discovery of humanity's century-long intelligence operation. The galaxy wasn't nearly as unified under Council control as it appeared. Hundreds of species lived in the vast spaces between Council territory, either hiding from detection or actively avoiding contact. Many of these species had tried independence before. Some had been absorbed into the Council system after facing the usual pattern of pirates and economic pressure. Others had simply disappeared, their fate unknown but presumed grim. Now, for the first time in millennia, one of these species had openly defied the Council and lived to tell about it. Back in Council space, the economic effects of humanity's withdrawal were beginning to cascade through the system. The raw materials that humans had been providing weren't just convenient. They were essential for maintaining several key industries. "The tritium shortages are getting critical," reported Economic Advisor Mel Tran during the Emergency Council session. Human mining operations in the Centauri asteroid fields were providing 60% of our supply. Surely we can source tritium from other members, Speaker Veltar said. Not without massive infrastructure investment. The humans had developed extremely efficient extraction methods. Replacing their output would require building new facilities on at least 6 worlds, at tremendous cost. The pattern was repeating across dozens of materials. Humanity's compact territory had been producing far more than any species their size should have been capable of. The efficiency of their operations suggested technology that was significantly more advanced than they had revealed. Speaker, Counselor Zethrim said, we need to consider the possibility that our fundamental assumptions about humanity were incorrect. In what way? We assumed they were a young species seeking guidance. What if they're actually a mature civilization that was testing us? The implications of that possibility sent ripples of unease through the chamber. If humanity had been evaluating the council rather than seeking membership, it suggested a level of confidence and capability that changed everything. Impossible, the Krotak delegate declared. We monitored their development. They only achieved faster-than-light travel 15 years ago. That's when they revealed their faster-than-light travel to us, Zethrim corrected. There's a difference. In the depths of space, the difference was becoming apparent. Human ships that had officially never existed were emerging from hiding. Deep space installations that should have been impossible to build were suddenly visible on long-range scans. The humans hadn't just been hiding their military capabilities. They had been hiding their entire civilization. Admiral Thexvar received updates from his scouts with growing alarm. Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures from the human home system. Whatever they're powering up, it's orders of magnitude beyond what we thought they possessed. Could it be a weapon? Unknown, sir. The energy patterns don't match anything in our databases. What the Council forces were detecting was the activation of humanity's true industrial base. Hidden factories, automated mining operations, and manufacturing facilities that had been operating under strict energy management protocols to avoid detection. Humanity had spent a century building a shadow empire, designed to be completely self-sufficient and hidden from galactic observation. The small territory they officially claimed was just the visible tip of a vast network of installations, colonies, and resource operations. Sir, the communications officer reported, we're receiving a transmission from the human frontier. Admiral Thexvar straightened. Finally, put it through. The image that appeared on the screen wasn't Ambassador Chun, but a man in what appeared to be a military uniform. Behind him, the bridge of his ship was clearly visible, showing technology that made the Council's most advanced vessels look primitive. I am Admiral Marcus Webb of the Human Colonial Defense Force. You have 72 hours to withdraw your forces from our border. Admiral Webb, Thexvar replied carefully. I am Admiral Thexvar of the Council Peace Enforcement Fleet. We are in neutral space conducting routine patrols. Admiral Thexvar, there is no neutral space within 10 light years of human territory. Everything you see around you has been claimed and developed by humanity for the past 60 years. You are trespassing. The statement hit the Council forces like a physical blow. 60 years? The humans had been claiming territory before they officially made contact? That's impossible, Thexvar protested. These systems have been surveyed. They're empty. Admiral Webb smiled. And somehow that expression was more threatening than any weapon. Admiral, I'm transmitting the coordinates of our installations in your vicinity. I think you'll find your surveys were incomplete. The data that flooded the Council ship's sensors was staggering. Mining operations throughout the asteroid fields. Deep space monitoring stations. Hidden bases on planets they had classified as uninhabitable. An entire network of facilities that had been operating under their noses for decades. How? Thexvar whispered. Stealth technology, careful planning, and patience, Admiral Webb replied. We've been watching you for a very long time, Admiral. Learning. Preparing. For what? For this conversation. You have 71 hours and 43 minutes remaining. The transmission cut off, leaving the Council forces alone with the horrifying realization that everything they thought they knew about humanity was wrong. As word of the ultimatum reached the Council chambers, panic began to set in. Humanity wasn't just refusing to join the galactic community. They were revealing that they had never needed to join it in the first place. The carefully maintained balance of power that had kept the galaxy stable for 10,000 years was crumbling. And the humans were just getting started. The Council emergency session had been running for 18 straight hours. Speaker Veltar's skin had cycled through every color in the Zephyrian emotional spectrum as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The Altarian mining colonies are reporting equipment failures, Trade Advisor Meltran announced. Their tritium extraction has dropped 40% in the last week. The Kepler refineries are experiencing similar problems, added Industrial Coordinator Hexmoth. Critical systems are shutting down without explanation. Counselor Zethrim leaned forward in his ancient chair. These aren't random failures. Someone is causing them. Impossible, the Krotak delegate rumbled. Those facilities are protected by the most advanced security systems in the galaxy. They're surrounded by our defense fleets. Protected from external threats, Zethrim replied quietly. But what if the threat was already inside? Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the council chambers. Emergency lights bathed the assembly in red warning strobes. Speaker, the communications officer's voice cracked with stress. We're receiving reports of massive system failures across 17 sectors. Industrial facilities, communication networks, defense installations. Everything is going dark simultaneously. Speaker Veltar's skin turned pure white with shock. That's impossible. Those systems aren't connected. There's no way to coordinate such widespread failures. In the depths of space, Admiral Webb stood on the bridge of the human dreadnought Determination. Around him, his crew monitored the results of Operation Revelation with professional satisfaction. Phase 3 is proceeding according to schedule, reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim. All primary targets have been neutralized. Secondary targets are responding to the software updates. Admiral Webb nodded. For 60 years, humanity had been secretly installing monitoring devices and software backdoors throughout Council space. Every piece of technology they had traded to the Council contained hidden programming, waiting for activation. The galaxy had become dependent on human innovations without realizing it. Efficiency improvements in mining equipment, upgrades to communication networks, optimizations for power generation systems. All gifts from humanity, all containing hidden capabilities. Admiral, the communications officer reported, we're receiving surrender requests from 43 different systems. They're asking us to restore their facilities. Not yet, Webb replied. Let the Council understand the scope of their situation first. Back in the Council chambers, the full scale of the disaster was becoming apparent. Speaker Veltar stared at the tactical display showing the affected systems. Nearly 30% of Council space was experiencing critical infrastructure failures. How long have they been planning this? He whispered. Since before first contact, Counselor Zethrim answered. Possibly since before they achieved faster-than-light travel. This level of infiltration would take decades to accomplish. But the economic benefits we received from human trade were real, protested Meltran. Their technology helped us increase efficiency across hundreds of worlds. Their technology, Zethrim emphasized. Technology they designed, built, and installed. Technology they could control. The implications hit the assembled delegates like a physical wave. For 60 years, they had been allowing humans to modify and upgrade their most critical systems. They had welcomed the improvements, celebrated the increased efficiency, never questioning how such a young species could develop such advanced solutions. Sir, Admiral Thexvar's voice came through the emergency communication channel. The human ultimatum expires in 6 hours. They're demanding complete withdrawal from their territory. What are our military options? Speaker Veltar asked. Unknown, sir. We still don't have accurate intelligence on human military capabilities. What we're seeing suggests technology significantly beyond our own. Recommendations? There was a long pause before Thexvar answered. Sir, I recommend we comply with their demands while we assess our options. The greatest military force in the galaxy was recommending retreat from a species they had dismissed as primitive just months earlier. Speaker, called out the economic advisor. We're receiving communication from the Nexus Industrial Collective. Their entire manufacturing base has shut down. They're requesting permission to negotiate directly with humanity. Denied. Speaker Veltar replied automatically. All contact with humanity goes through the Council. Sir, They're threatening to withdraw from the Council if their facilities aren't restored. Their entire economy depends on the affected systems. Similar reports were flooding in from across Council space. Worlds that had been thriving under Council protection were suddenly facing economic collapse. The technology that had made their prosperity possible was failing, and only humanity had the ability to fix it. On the human frontier, Admiral Chun reviewed the intelligence reports with grim satisfaction. Humanity's intelligence network had spent decades mapping every aspect of Council society, identifying the critical weaknesses that kept the system stable. The Council's power rested on three pillars: economic control, military superiority, and technological dependency. Humanity was systematically attacking all three. "Admiral," her aide reported, "we're receiving communication requests from 17 independent species in the Outer Rim. They want to know if we can protect them from Council retaliation. What's our response? That depends on Phase 4. Are we ready to proceed?" Chin studied the strategic display showing the positions of human forces throughout the galaxy. Hidden fleets, concealed bases, and covert operatives were positioned across dozens of sectors. Everything was in place. Yes. Initiate Phase 4. Across the galaxy, human agents who had been living undercover for decades began revealing themselves. Scientists working in Council research facilities, engineers maintaining critical infrastructure, traders operating in galactic markets. All part of humanity's vast intelligence operation. Dr. Elena Vasquez, who had officially been conducting xenobiological research for the Council, stood up in the Zephyrian Science Institute and calmly announced her true identity. Around her, colleagues who had worked with her for years stared in shock. "For the past 12 years, I've been documenting Council practices for the human government," she explained to the stunned researchers. "The suppression of technological development, the restriction of scientific inquiry, the deliberate maintenance of dependency relationships. It's all been recorded and verified." Similar revelations were occurring throughout Council space. Humans were emerging from positions in government, military, industry, and academia. Positions they had held for years, sometimes decades, gathering intelligence and preparing for this moment. The psychological impact was devastating. The Council's entire intelligence apparatus had been compromised from within. Every major decision, every secret operation, every classified development had been observed and reported by human agents. "How many?" Speaker Veltar asked weakly as the reports continued to stream in. "At least 4,000 confirmed human operatives," his security chief reported. "Possibly more. They've been systematically infiltrating every aspect of Council society." "For how long?" "Some of them have been in place for over 30 years, sir. They integrated so completely that we never suspected." The scale of the deception was staggering. Humanity hadn't just been hiding their military and industrial capabilities. They had been conducting the largest intelligence operation in galactic history. "Sir," the communications officer announced, "we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Webb." "Put it through." Admiral Webb's image appeared on the main screen, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him stood humans in military uniforms representing every major branch of their defense forces. The message was clear. This wasn't the action of a single commander, but the coordinated policy of an entire civilization. "Speaker Veltar," Admiral Webb began, "I trust you're beginning to understand your situation. Your economy is failing. Your military forces are retreating. Your intelligence apparatus has been compromised. You have two choices." "What choices?" Veltar asked, though he dreaded the answer. "First, you can continue to operate as you have for the past 10,000 years. Maintain your control through force and deception. Try to repair the damage we've caused and rebuild your power base. This path leads to a very short, but very destructive war that you will lose. And the second choice? You can accept that the galactic order is changing, that humanity offers a different model of interspecies relations, one based on equality rather than hierarchy." Speaker Veltar's skin had faded to a pale gray. "What exactly are you proposing?" "The dissolution of the Council system. The establishment of a true galactic federation where member species retain their sovereignty. The end of the protection racket that has kept this galaxy in stagnation for millennia." "That's impossible," protested the Krotak delegate. "The galaxy requires order, structure. Without the Council's guidance, civilization would collapse into chaos. Admiral Webb smiled. Counselor, you're confusing order with control. True order comes from cooperation, not domination. We're prepared to demonstrate that model. How? We've been in contact with 47 independent species that have been hiding in the outer rim for centuries. Species that refused to join your system and survived on their own. They're ready to emerge and form the core of a new federation. We've also been working with oppressed minorities within Council space, added Admiral Chun, stepping into view. Species that joined the Council under duress and have been waiting for an opportunity to regain their independence. The tactical display in the Council chambers suddenly lit up with new contacts. Ships were emerging from hiding throughout the galaxy, representing dozens of species that had been living in the shadows of Council civilization. This is a revolution, whispered Counselor Zethrim. Yes, Admiral Webb confirmed. But it doesn't have to be a violent one. The old system is ending whether you resist or not. The question is whether you want to be part of building something better or whether you want to go down fighting for something that was always built on oppression. Speaker Veltar looked around the chamber at his fellow delegates. Fear, confusion, and desperation were written on every face. The empire they had built over 10,000 years was crumbling in real time. What guarantees do we have? He asked finally. None, Admiral Webb replied bluntly. Freedom doesn't come with guarantees. But neither did your old system, as your member species are discovering. The difference is that in the new Federation, every species will have a voice in their own destiny. And if we refuse, then you'll face the combined forces of 54 independent species who are tired of living under your system, plus every oppressed group within your own territory who sees a chance for freedom. The chamber fell silent as the delegates contemplated their options. Everything they had built, everything they had controlled, everything they had believed about galactic civilization was falling apart. We need time to consider, Speaker Veltar said finally. You have 24 hours, Admiral Webb replied. After that, the new Federation begins with or without Council participation. But I should mention that several of your member species have already indicated their intention to join us. The transmission ended, leaving the Council delegates alone with the wreckage of their empire and the terrifying prospect of an uncertain future. For the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy was about to change. And humanity was leading that change. The 24-hour deadline approached like an incoming storm. Throughout Council space, emergency meetings were being held on hundreds of worlds as species faced the most significant decision in galactic history. On Altaria Prime, the world that had once been a shining example of Council prosperity, Governor Nexus stood before his planetary assembly. The industrial failures of the past week had brought home the reality of their situation with devastating clarity. Fellow citizens, Governor Nexus began, his voice heavy with the weight of history. We face a choice that our ancestors could never have imagined. For 800 years, we have lived under Council protection. That protection has come at a price we are only now beginning to understand. In the Assembly Hall, representatives from every major city and industrial center listened in tense silence. The economic data was undeniable. Without the human-designed systems that had been secretly integrated into their infrastructure over the decades, Altaria's economy would collapse within months. The humans have offered to restore our systems, Governor Nexus continued, but only if we join their new federation. They promise equality, self-determination, and the right to develop our own destiny. What about security? Called out Representative Keln from the mining districts. The Council has protected us from pirates, hostile neighbors, territorial disputes. Can the humans guarantee the same? Governor Nexus gestured to the holographic display showing recent intelligence reports. The evidence suggests that many of the threats we faced were manufactured. The pirate raids that led to our original Council membership used Council-designed ships and weapons. The territorial disputes with our neighbors often involved Council mediation that favored outcomes requiring increased Council presence. The murmur that ran through the assembly spoke of shock, anger, and slowly dawning understanding. Meanwhile, in the depths of space between galaxies, a sight that would have terrified the Council was taking shape. The first gathering of the Galactic Liberation Fleet was assembling at coordinates that had been secret for over a century. Admiral Chen stood on the command deck of humanity's flagship, Earth's Defiance, watching as ships from dozens of species took their positions. Some were familiar designs from species that had hidden in the outer rim for centuries. Others were completely unknown, representing civilizations that had avoided all contact with the Council-dominated galaxy. Admiral, her tactical officer reported, "We now have confirmed participation from 58 species. Total fleet strength is approximately 12,000 vessels. Composition, varied, ma'am. The Kithara Confederation is bringing their stealth destroyer squadrons. The Free Traders Alliance has contributed their entire merchant marine, retrofitted for combat. The Nexus Remnant is fielding those crystalline ships they've been developing in secret." Chen nodded with satisfaction. Each species brought unique capabilities that had been developed independently of Council influence. The diversity of technology and tactics would make the Liberation Fleet far more adaptable than the Council's standardized forces. What about the defectors from Council space? Growing by the hour, ma'am. We've received formal declarations from 17 Council member species. They're bringing their defense fleets and requesting protection during the transition period. The speed of the Council's collapse was exceeding even humanity's optimistic projections. Decades of careful preparation were paying off as species that had been waiting for an opportunity to break free finally saw their chance. On Zephyria, the Council's homeworld, Speaker Veltar sat in his private chambers reviewing the cascade of reports that painted a picture of complete systemic failure. His aide, Mortex, stood nearby with yet another datapad filled with grim news. The Krotak Empire has withdrawn their fleets to defend their home systems, Mortex reported. They're claiming the need to protect against pirate raids, but intelligence suggests they're actually preparing to negotiate separately with the humans. And the Ethereal Collective? Complete communication blackout. Their representatives haven't responded to any council directives in the past 12 hours. Speaker Veltar's skin had remained a dull gray for hours, a sign of deep emotional distress in his species. How many member species are still responding to council authority? Fewer than 30%, Speaker. And that number is dropping every hour. The mathematical reality was stark. The council required the economic output and military support of its member species to function. As those species withdrew their cooperation, the entire system was entering a death spiral. Sir, Mortex continued hesitantly. There's something else. We've detected massive energy signatures from the human home system. Whatever they're powering up, it's orders of magnitude beyond anything in our databases. Speaker Veltar stood and walked to his chamber's viewing port, looking out at the stars that had been under council dominion for 10,000 years. What are they building, Mortex? Unknown, sir. But the energy patterns suggest construction. Something very large. What the council's sensors were detecting was the activation of humanity's greatest secret project. Hidden in the asteroid fields of the Sol system, massive construction platforms had been building something unprecedented for the past 50 years. Admiral Sarah Martinez, chief engineer of the project, stood in the command center watching the final assembly phases. Around her, the largest artificial construct in galactic history was taking shape. Status report, she requested. Primary assembly 97% complete, her project coordinator replied. All major systems are coming online ahead of schedule. We'll be ready for the demonstration in 18 hours. And the political situation? Admiral Webb reports that the council deadline expires in 6 hours. Preliminary responses suggest approximately 40% of council space is prepared to join the Federation immediately. Another 30% is requesting extended negotiations. Admiral Martinez nodded. And the final 30%? Hostile or undecided. We should be prepared for armed resistance. Then, it's good that we'll have a demonstration ready. What humanity was building would fundamentally change the balance of power in the galaxy. Not just militarily, but economically and socially. It represented a technology that could make the old system of resource scarcity and territorial competition obsolete. Back in the council chambers, the final emergency session was beginning. Speaker Veltar looked out at an assembly that was only half full. Many delegates had simply stopped attending as their governments withdrew from council authority. Honored delegates, Speaker Veltar began. We face the end of an era. The question before us is not whether change will come, but how we will adapt to it. Councillor Zethrim, one of the few remaining founding species representatives, activated his translation device. The humans have demonstrated capabilities we never imagined. They have infiltrated our society, compromised our technology, and turned our own member species against us. Resistance may be futile. The Krotak do not surrender, rumbled the Krotak delegate, though his posture suggested less confidence than his words. If the humans want war, we will give them war. With what? Asked the representative from the Mineral Worlds Consortium. Half our fleets have declared independence. Our shipyards are offline because of human sabotage. Our supply lines have collapsed. The brutal reality was sinking in. The Council's military might had always depended on the cooperation of their member species. Without that cooperation, they were militarily insignificant compared to the forces arrayed against them. There is another consideration, Councillor Zethrim added quietly. Intelligence reports suggest that the humans may possess technology that renders our entire concept of warfare obsolete. Impossible, the Krotak delegate protested. Military technology develops incrementally. No species makes quantum leaps. No species except one that spent a century secretly developing while hiding their true capabilities, Zethrim replied. The humans have been planning this for longer than most species achieve spaceflight. Who knows what they've developed in secret? As if summoned by his words, the chamber's communication systems activated without authorization. Admiral Webb's image appeared on every screen throughout Council space simultaneously. Citizens of the galaxy, Admiral Webb began. In 30 minutes, we will provide a demonstration of humanity's commitment to galactic freedom. We invite all species to observe and consider their future. The transmission provided coordinates in deep space, far from any inhabited systems. Every ship, every observatory, every sensor array in the galaxy began turning toward those coordinates. Speaker Veltar, Admiral Webb continued, the deadline for your decision has arrived. We require your answer. Speaker Veltar looked around the nearly empty chamber. The representatives who remained wore expressions of fear, resignation, or desperate calculation. The empire they had built was already dead. The only question was whether its death would be peaceful or violent. Admiral Webb, Speaker Veltar replied, the Council accepts the inevitability of change. We are prepared to discuss transition terms. Excellent. All Council representatives are invited to witness the demonstration. After that, we'll begin planning the future of galactic civilization. The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in silence. 10,000 years of galactic order had just ended with a simple exchange of words. Throughout the galaxy, ships began moving toward the demonstration coordinates. Council vessels, independent fleets, refugee convoys, and neutral observers all converged on the same point in space. Whatever humanity was about to reveal would define the next era of galactic history. On Earth, President Elena Santos stood in the Situation Room monitoring the global response to humanity's boldest gambit. Around her, the leaders of every major human government watched as their species stepped onto the galactic stage not as junior partners, but as revolutionaries. Madam President, her science advisor reported, all human forces are in position. The demonstration is ready to proceed. Any final intelligence on Council military response? Minimal, ma'am. Most Council fleets are in defensive positions around their home systems. They're not preparing for an offensive operation. President Santos nodded. Then, let's show the galaxy what humanity has been building. Signal Admiral Martinez to begin the demonstration. In the darkness between stars, the largest gathering of spacefaring vessels in galactic history waited to see what would emerge from humanity's secret project. The future of civilization hung in the balance, and humanity was about to tip the scales. The demonstration began with silence. At the designated coordinates, empty space stretched in all directions while thousands of ships maintained observation positions at a safe distance. Council vessels, independent fleets, and refugee convoys all waited with growing tension. Then, reality folded. Space itself seemed to bend, and twist as massive gravitational manipulators activated. Energy readings spiked across every sensor in the fleet as something impossible began to emerge from the quantum foam of empty space. Admiral Webb stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the reactions from the observing fleets with satisfaction. Engineering, report on gateway stability. All systems nominal, Admiral. The aperture is holding steady at the target coordinates. What emerged from the impossible opening in space defied every understanding of physics and engineering that the galaxy possessed. A structure so vast that it dwarfed entire star systems, built from materials that shouldn't exist, and operating on principles that challenged the fundamental laws of the universe. The Infinity Gate stretched across 300 million kilometers of space, its crystalline framework pulsing with energy patterns that made trained physicists weep with frustration. At its center, a swirling vortex of controlled spacetime led to somewhere else entirely. Speaker Veltar stared at the impossible sight from the bridge of his flagship, his skin cycling through colors that had no names in any language. What is that thing? His science advisor was frantically consulting instrument readings that made no sense. Speaker, the energy output alone should have destroyed everything within 100 light-years. The gravitational effects should be tearing apart nearby star systems. But, somehow, it's completely stable. How is that possible? I don't know, sir. The physics involved are beyond our comprehension. Across the assembled fleets, similar conversations were taking place as the most advanced minds in the galaxy struggled to understand what humanity had built. The technology involved didn't just represent an advancement over existing capabilities. It represented a complete revolution in the understanding of how the universe worked. Admiral Chen's voice carried across all communication channels, reaching every ship in the massive fleet. What you are witnessing is humanity's gift to the galaxy. The Infinity Gate represents the end of scarcity, the end of territorial competition, and the beginning of unlimited expansion. Through the swirling vortex, observers could see glimpses of what lay beyond. Star systems rich with resources, habitable worlds stretching to infinity, space itself becoming a medium for unlimited growth rather than a battleground for finite resources. The technology that built this gate has been humanity's secret for over a century. Admiral Chen continued. We learned early that the galaxy was divided between those who controlled resources and those who fought over them. We chose a third option. We decided to make resources infinite. On Altaria Prime, Governor Nexus watched the demonstration with his planetary assembly. The implications were staggering. If humanity could open gateways to unlimited space, the fundamental economics that had driven galactic conflict for millennia were obsolete. Fellow citizens, Governor Nexus said quietly, we are witnessing the dawn of a new age. The choice we face isn't just about political systems anymore. It's about whether we want to be part of unlimited expansion or remain trapped in a galaxy fighting over scraps. The vote that followed was unanimous. Throughout Council space, similar scenes were playing out on hundreds of worlds. Species that had spent centuries competing for limited resources were suddenly faced with the prospect of unlimited expansion. The old system of hierarchical control made no sense in a universe with infinite room for growth. Admiral, reported the communications officer on Admiral Webb's flagship, we're receiving surrender notifications from 43 Council worlds. They're requesting immediate admission to the Federation. What about the holdouts? The Krotak Empire is still claiming they'll resist. A few other species are maintaining hostile posture, but their military capabilities have been severely compromised by our infiltration operations. Admiral Webb nodded. Signal the demonstration fleet to proceed with Phase 2. What happened next removed any doubt about humanity's military capabilities. From concealed positions throughout the demonstration area, human vessels began to appear. Not dozens, not hundreds, but thousands of ships that had been hiding in plain sight using stealth technology that made them completely invisible to galactic sensors. The human fleet that revealed itself was larger than the combined navies of the entire Council. More importantly, the technology it displayed was centuries ahead of anything the galaxy possessed. Ships that bent space around themselves for faster-than-light travel without using the standard hyperspace routes. Weapons that manipulated matter at the quantum level. defensive systems that turned incoming energy attacks into additional power for their own systems. Krotak Admiral Boltar, commanding the last significant Council fleet in the area, stared at the impossible sight. His tactical officer was reporting contact after contact as human ships materialized around them in perfect formation. "How many?" Admiral Boltar asked. 8,000 confirmed contacts, sir. Possibly more. Our sensors can't penetrate their stealth systems to get accurate counts. Weapon status? Unknown, sir. We can't identify their armaments. The energy signatures don't match anything in our databases. Admiral Boltar's mandibles clicked with frustration. In a single moment, every tactical advantage the Council possessed had become irrelevant. They were facing technology so advanced that resistance was meaningless. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." "Put it through." Admiral Webb's image appeared on the screen, but this time his expression carried no hint of negotiation or compromise. "Admiral Boltar, you have 30 seconds to order your fleet to stand down and prepare for boarding. Any hostile action will be met with immediate neutralization." "The Krotak do not surrender to inferior species," Boltar replied, though his voice lacked conviction. "Admiral, look around you. You're outnumbered 10-1 by ships that are centuries ahead of your technology. Your weapons cannot penetrate our defenses. Your shields cannot stop our weapons. Your sensors cannot detect our movements. In what way are we inferior?" Boltar's tactical display showed the hopeless situation. Human ships surrounded his fleet in perfect formation, their weapons already trained on his vessels. A single human destroyer appeared to have enough firepower to eliminate his entire command. 20 seconds, Admiral. Boltar looked around his bridge at his crew, warriors who had spent their lives believing in Krotak's superiority. The illusion was shattered. They were children playing with toys while facing an adult with tools they couldn't comprehend. "All Krotak vessels, power down weapons, and prepare for inspection," Boltar ordered quietly. "The correct term is surrender, Admiral," Admiral Webb corrected. "Say it clearly, so there's no confusion." The silence on the Krotak bridge was deafening. Finally, Admiral Boltar spoke the words that ended 10,000 years of galactic order. "All Krotak vessels, surrender to human forces." The last significant military resistance to the new order had collapsed without firing a shot. Speaker Veltar, watching from his own flagship, felt the weight of history settling on his shoulders. The civilization he had helped lead for 3 centuries was ending not with a glorious battle, but with the simple recognition of absolute technological inferiority. "Speaker," his aide reported, "final counts show that 87% of former Council space has declared for the Federation. The remaining 13% are requesting terms for peaceful integration." "And the Council itself?" "Speaker, there is no Council. Not anymore." The statement hit like a physical blow. The governmental structure that had unified the galaxy for millennia had simply ceased to exist. Species were declaring independence and immediately applying for Federation membership. The old system was dissolving like a sandcastle in the tide. "Open a channel to Admiral Webb," Speaker Veltar ordered. "Admiral, this is Speaker Veltar. The Council, the former Council, formally requests terms for joining your Federation." Admiral Webb's response was surprisingly gentle. "Speaker, there are no terms. The Federation is open to all species that accept the principles of equality, self-determination, and mutual cooperation. No species rules over others. No species is ruled by others. And the transition will be managed cooperatively. We have no interest in conquest or domination. We want partners in building a galactic civilization based on freedom rather than fear." From the Infinity Gate came the final demonstration of humanity's commitment to that vision. Through the portal, construction ships were already emerging, carrying prefabricated infrastructure to begin developing the unlimited territory that the gate provided access to. "Every species in the Federation will have access to the gates," Admiral Chun announced to the assembled fleets. "Unlimited expansion, unlimited resources, unlimited opportunity. The age of scarcity is over." On Earth, President Santos watched the culmination of humanity's greatest gambit. In the Situation Room, representatives from every major human government witnessed the peaceful transition that their species had worked toward for over a century. "Madam President," her science advisor reported. Initial Federation membership stands at 237 species. More applications are arriving every hour. Any resistance? Minimal, ma'am. The demonstration was more effective than our most optimistic projections. Most species are eager to be part of unlimited expansion rather than fighting over limited resources. President Santos nodded with satisfaction. Then, let's begin building the future. Throughout the galaxy, the transformation was already beginning. Species that had been enemies for centuries were working together to plan joint colonial expeditions through the Infinity Gates. Scientific cooperation replaced technological suppression as humanity shared the basic principles behind their revolutionary technologies. The old system of protection rackets and enforced hierarchy gave way to voluntary cooperation and mutual benefit. Species were free to develop their own paths while contributing to collective growth and exploration. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now revealed as humanity's lead xenobiologist, stood before a mixed assembly of scientists from dozens of species. The universe is infinite, she explained. There's room for every culture, every philosophy, every approach to civilization. We don't need to fight over space anymore. We need to figure out how to explore it together. The applause that greeted her words came from beings who had spent their lives believing that conflict was inevitable. For the first time in galactic history, cooperation was more profitable than competition. 5 years later, Speaker Veltar stood on the observation deck of New Harmony, the Federation's mobile capital. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see hundreds of ships from dozens of species working together to explore a galaxy cluster that hadn't existed until humanity opened a gateway to it. Remarkable, he said to Admiral Webb, who had become his unlikely friend during the transition period. 5 years ago, I would have said this was impossible. 5 years ago, it was impossible, Admiral Webb replied. But that's the thing about humans. We have a talent for making the impossible inevitable. How long were you planning this? Honestly, since we first detected galactic radio transmissions 3 centuries ago, we knew we'd eventually make contact with spacefaring species. We wanted to be ready for whatever we found. And what did you find? Admiral Webb gestured toward the bustling activity outside the window, where former enemies worked side by side to build a future none of them could have imagined alone. We found family. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had walked away from the Council's offer not because they wanted to be alone, but because they wanted everyone to be free. The negotiations had collapsed not due to human stubbornness, but due to human vision. And, in walking away, humanity had given the galaxy something it had never possessed in 10,000 years of Council rule: hope for a better tomorrow.